All right, well, let's recap one of the very first bowl games and a bowl game of a future Big Ten team. We had UCLA face off against Boise State, kind of a thriller. Boise State was up early in this one, and then UCLA came storming back and won it 35-22. So big win for UCLA. Ethan Garbers came in after starting the season. He ends the season with a really cool game. The announcers were going crazy with it, and I just thought it was a really cool story of everything that encapsulated the season for them. Alec, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
I was actually a little surprised by the outcome because I thought Boise looked really hot in their conference championship game. And UCLA was going through the whole Dante Moore, like Chip Kelly, fired then not fired thing, losing the defensive coordinator. But they came out, they ran for 280 yards. I think they had 230 passing too. Like they put on quite the show actually offensively. So I was actually a little surprised by that because I thought Boise kind of turned a corner late in the year with the coaching change and seemed like they were on an upward trajectory while UCLA was kind of scuffling through all those coaching changes and the drama with Moore. So, good for them. Good for the Big Ten. I guess we're gonna, count this one on our tally. But I actually was a little surprised by the outcome. I did think maybe Boise was going to win this.
Yeah, when we talked about this game before, Boise State had their starting quarterback going to be out, and I know that that was a big thing that I was harping on, and it turned out to be a big thing. Not to disrespect the quarterback for Boise
Yeah.
State, but he just, Teller is obviously not the same guy that Green
Hmm.
was. So obviously that impacted them and hurt them. And UCLA, they still have a good defense, even with some guys opting out and guys in the portal. They still have a good defense, and they're still well coached, even without their defensive coordinator there. So, yeah, overall, I was impressed with the way UCLA came back. They would have been very easy for them to just lie down and die, and Ethan Garbers to, kind of just give in. But no, he came back and he rallied the team, and I had a lot of fun watching this game. Zach, what were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point about the starting quarterback, UCLA was lucky that Boise didn't put this game away in the first half because, they had 4 scoring drives, but they held them to 3 field goals in the red zone and, just the 1 touchdown. That game is 28-7 or 24-7 at half instead of 16-7. Like it's over. And instead it's only 16-7 and UCLA takes over in the third quarter. I mean, credit, TJ Harden, J. Michael Sturdivant made big plays. Obviously, Ethan Garbers, who you both mentioned, really, really phenomenal second half by the Bruins. But the reality is, I think they are fortunate that they were not facing Boise State starting quarterback. Because I think if he were playing, I think that game is probably over at half, or at least it's a desperate attempt to come back, because to come back from 3 scores is pretty hard. So, but give credit to Chip Kelly. I think Alec, you mentioned just the way they were able to persevere. That's a big deal. And they're going to need to do that in the new Big Ten. So this was good practice for them. So UCLA lucky, but they persevered, and there's credit there for that.
Yeah, and I give credit for the persevering as well, but I'm glad you mentioned the fact that they'll be in the new Big Ten, Zach, because they are one of these teams that I'm kind of racking my brain on, like, how are they going to really perform in the new Big Ten? Like, how well are they actually going to be able to do? You have any thoughts on that, Zach?
Yeah, it's hard because UCLA has been uh, enigmatic is maybe the word I would use, because I think their peak, they can compete with anybody. Like, I think there have been times where we've seen them compete with, I think they beat LSU a few years ago, and they've been ranked in the top 10 at times. But then it almost have like Maryland type losses where you're like, oh, you could do well. You just lost to Northwestern. How did you do that? I think UCLA is similar. And like Chip Kelly, as great of an innovator as he was, 15 years ago, I'm not sure he's the guy that, like, I don't think he's the same coach, or I don't think he's adjusted. So I still think he's a good coach. And I think because he's in LA, I think he can probably still recruit a bit, but I think you're looking at a program that's probably going to stay around the level they've always been, which has been, decent, 7-5, 8-4, 6-6. They'll be like the number 10 team in the Big Ten most years, or like somewhere in there. And I think there'll be a couple years where they're in contention for the Big Ten. But I think overall, I think you're looking at a team that is a good foil for USC. But other than that, they're a middle of the pack team.
Yeah, I think you hit on the head there. Alec, do you agree? Middle of the pack team. What are some of your expectations?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the record you have down there that they finished with this year, 8-5. Like, I think that's something to think about with them. Like, if that's 7-5, win a bowl game, 8-4, lose a bowl game. Like, I think they'll be somewhere in there because of, they still have some talent. Like Zach mentioned, being LA, California, recruiting is a little easier. They'll have enough talent, I think, to get, at least 6-7 wins a season. It comes down to, is it going to be Chip Kelly, kind of fighting them through this, or someone else for the long haul? Which, maybe if it's someone else, maybe that elevates their game eventually. But I do think they're, out of the 4 teams joining from the Pac-12, they're probably 4th for me. Close with USC with the mess they're going through right now, but I think they're 4th for me. So, between that, and I'd put, obviously Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State ahead of them, and then Iowa too, and with Wisconsin and Michigan State in kind of some upward trajectory rebuilds, then they are looking at 8th or 9th best team in the Big Ten. And I think that's just now before, we talked about Nebraska, before someone like them could get going again, or if Purdue gets going under their new coaching staff and Illinois continues to, fight for wins. So I think right now you're like 8 or 9, and I see it more likely to go backwards than forward.
Yeah, and UCLA, I mean, they don't have the most forgiving schedule either. We just talked about USC, and I was like, I think I remember looking at UCLA. This schedule is not great for them either, because you have at Hawaii, very first game, then you have a bye, and then Indiana. So, I think they win that game, but you never know. We'll see what Kirk Cignetti does. And then they also play LSU at LSU. So LSU is just playing the LA teams next year, I guess.
What is LSU doing?
Yeah, that's Ryan quite Kelly. The out of conference.
Right. And then their last game of the season is Fresno State, which, I mean, that's not a bad Mountain West team. And then Oregon, at Penn State, Minnesota, at Rutgers, at Nebraska, Iowa, at Washington, and then USC. So they play all of the West Coast teams. I don't know why they play all of those. And then Penn State. So, I mean, that's, in my mind, 5 very losable games, and really 6 possibly, if you include Iowa in there as well. Now, Iowa is at their place, but I don't know how much of that advantage that is. I never really see that many UCLA fans at the game, so maybe travel is an advantage. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't look good for UCLA coming into the Big Ten either. I think that's a hard schedule, and they'll definitely have to pull at least 1 or 2 sneaker games out to even be bowl eligible, in my mind. So, any thoughts on their schedule, guys? No.
I just say this is outlandish for me to say, but Hawaii, like going to Hawaii, has traditionally been a trouble spot that you wouldn't think would be a trouble spot.
Yeah.
And like UCLA is not good enough to just show up and win a game.
Yeah.
Like they gotta arrive. And so if they're locked in, they'll win that game. But I don't know, the idea. And then if Hawaii beats you, then do they beat you twice? For that whole adage. I
mean, if Hawaii beats them, I'm picking Indiana to beat them too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably would.
So, I mean, if you do that, that's a 9-loss season. So,
yeah,
at least. So, yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting with these West Coast teams coming in and facing the Big Ten teams. Not many, no Ohio State and Michigan, but getting Penn State, that'll be an interesting game as well. But at Penn State, so you guys won't have to travel out to LA, that many times.
Yeah.
So. Thanks for listening. In the Big Ten Huddle, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.